Hi, and welcome to day 9 of radicals. Tonight we will be dealing with, or today we will be dealing with, solving rational inequalities. And of course we have 4 steps that you need to follow. First one is to get all the variables on one side of your inequality. And then the second thing to do is factor. Third thing to do is make number lines. And the fourth is to find the solutions. So as we start here, I have 2 over x minus 1. All my variables are on one side of the inequality, and I like to have everything always on the left side of the inequality. And this is not factorable, so I'm going to go ahead and start making numbers. I need to make a number line for the numerator, and a number line for the denominator, and a number line for my answer. So my numerator is 2. My denominator is x minus 1. And my answer will go in the number line of 2 over x minus 1. Now, I have to ask myself, when do I have a 0 in my numerator? When do I have a 0 in my denominator? And then divide my 2 lines. Well, 2 is a constant. There is no variable in my numerator. Therefore, 2 go on my number line. And there is no 0. 2 is a constant, and since it's a constant, it is always positive. So I'm going to put pluses all along my number line. X minus 1 is equal to 0 when x is equal to 1. So if I put 1 in for x, I get 0. If I were to put a number less than 1, say for example, negative 5, negative 5 minus 1 is negative 6. So that means to the left of 1, I'm negative. If I put a number greater than 1, like 2 or 10 or 100, 2 minus 1 is 1. 10 minus 1 is 9. 100 minus 1 is 99. That is always positive. So then I have my 2 and my 1 that I can bring down. Now I'm going to divide my number lines. 2, which is a positive, divided by x minus 1. So a positive divided by a negative is a negative. A positive divided by a positive is a positive. And a positive divided by a positive is also a positive. I need to determine if I'm looking for positive answers or negative answers. I do that by looking at the original problem. X is greater than 0. Since x is greater than 0, greater than 0 means it's positive, we want the plus signs. Okay, and as I'm looking at my number line, my bottom number line, my plus signs start at 1 and continue to go. In this case, I have greater than. Since it's a greater than symbol, it's an open circle, and everything that is positive is to the right. So, as I look at this, everything that's positive is to the right of 2. To write this as an inequality, or sorry, the right of 1. As I write this in an inequality, I would say x is greater than 1. All right. Let's look at number 2. I have b minus 7 over b plus 2 is less than 0. Well, I'm going to need to draw 2 number lines plus a number line for my answer. So b minus 7, a b plus 2, and then I have my final number line, which is b plus 7, or sorry, b minus 7. Let me fix that. Okay, and then I want b minus 7 over b plus 2 for my final number line. B minus 7 is 0 when b is equal to 7. B minus 2 is equal to 0 when b is equal to negative 2. So if I go back to my number line of b minus 7, if I put a number smaller than 7 in 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, anything negative, if I put in 0, 0 minus 7 is negative 7. So that means everything to the left is negative. If I put a number greater than 7 in, 8, 9, 10, 100, 300, 500, it doesn't matter, it's going to be positive. I put a number, my second number line, less than negative 2, say for example negative 10 or negative 20 or negative 30. That's going to make my answer negative. If I put a number larger than 2, 0 is larger than 2, sorry, negative 2, larger than negative 2, if I put in 0, if I put in negative 1, if I put in 10, 20, 40, 60, 100, 300, I'm always going to get a positive value when I substitute in. So that means anything greater than negative 2 is positive. So then I divide my two number lines, kind of break it up so I can see what I'm doing here. Negative divided by negative is a positive. Positive divided by, or sorry, negative divided by positive is a negative, and a positive divided by positive is positive. In this case, I want everything less than 0. So since it's less than 0, we want the negatives this time. So if I go down and look, my negatives fall here. So I have negative 2, 7, and I'm looking for my negative values, and my negative values are in between negative 2 and 7. And in this case, because it's just less than, I want open circles, and we're going to shade in between. So now I need to write it as a compound inequality. So it's negative 2 less than b less than 7. All right, for number 3, I actually need to factor my numerator because that's factorable. And it is h minus 5 and h minus 10. So this time, instead of having just 3 number lines, I have to have a 4th number line because I have 2 factors and then 1 variable in the denominator. So we have h minus 5. Now we have h minus 10. Then we just have h. And then finally, we have h minus 10, h minus 5, all over h. So my 0 is when h is 5. My 0 for my second denominator is when h is 10. Our second factor is h is 10. And then my third 0 for my factor of h is just 0. So if I put a number in the left, so I put 0 in, I get 0 minus 5, I get a negative. If I put a number larger than 5, like 10, I will get a positive. Then with 10, if I put a number less than 10 in, 0, or 5, or even 9, I would get less than to the left. To the right, put a number larger than 10, like 15, I get positive. And then h, if I put a number less than 0, I get a negative number. If it's put a number greater than 0, it's just positive. So I'm going to have my number lines here. So this is 1, this is 5, and this is 10. So I'm going to just multiply and divide down my lines. Negative times a negative is a positive, times divided by another negative is a negative. A negative divided by or times another negative is positive, times the positive is positive. A positive times a negative is a negative, divided by another positive is negative. And then a positive divided by a times a positive divided by a positive would just be a positive. Oh, sorry. So on the number line, we have 5, or 1, 5, and hang on. All right, so I need to put 3 numbers on this number line. 0, 5, and 10. Why do I keep putting 0, 1? Hang on. Okay, now that I got my number line fixed, let's try this again. Anything to the left of 0 is negative. Anything between 1 and 5 is positive. Anything between 5 and 10 is negative. And anything greater than 10 is positive. In this case, I am looking for positives. So it's greater than 0. Therefore, we want positives. So, if I put in a number less than 1, I got negatives according to my chart. Between 1 and 5, I have positives. Between 5 and 10, I have negatives. 10 or more, I have positives. So this time I want the positives. When I go to write my inequality, I have to write a compound inequality between 1 and 5. Oh my goodness, that was 0 to begin with. I don't know where my brain is. I have 0 less than h less than 5, or x is greater than 10. Is what that is saying. Simply stated, it just says that h can be between 0 and 5 or greater than 10. Okay, for the last one, we have to factor the denominator. And plus 3 and minus 3. I have 1 with an n. And plus 3. And minus 3. And then you have your final answer. N is 0, and we substitute 0 in. And the second one with the n plus 3, n is 0 at negative 3. For the third one, n is minus 3. We will have a positive 3 when I check that. Alright, if I put in a number less than 0, so any number, negative number would make n negative, so this is all negative. And all to the right would be positive values. Negative 3, if I put in a number less than negative 3, like negative 5, negative 100, I would get a negative. If I put one in greater than negative 3, I would get all positives. Same thing for the next one. Everything less than 3 I get negatives. Anything greater than 3, I get positives. So we have our -3, our 0, and our +3. Negative, negative, negative. 3 negatives is a negative. Negative, positive, negative. 2 negatives and a positive make it positive. Positive, positive, negative, which make it negative. And then the last one's all positives. Since it's greater than 0, I have to find positives. All right, greater than 0, we're looking for our positives. Our positives are between 0 and 1, or sorry, -3 and 0. They're not equals 2, so we have to do open circles. And then it is greater than 10. All right, one more. Oh, that was it. I lied. All right, sorry, that took me longer than expected to get through all this. I had some difficulties with the writing, but as you can see, it's a simple process that you follow all along. What you're constantly doing is finding factors, finding zeros, and then telling me if things are positive or negative. Doing the number lines can be a lot of work. However, you'll never get the answer wrong if you do the number lines correctly. And that should be the easy part of the problems, is getting the number lines hooked up. All right, this was the last mandatory video for this unit. If I do another one, it will only be review. You have a test in about 2 to 3 days.